Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and the Great Pumpkin Challenge, which is another art collaboration with Dena Tollefson. I'll put links to her channel in the description box. For this challenge, all you had to do was to create a piece of art incorporating a pumpkin or the colour orange and upload your video today, the 25th of October. I wasn't sure I'd get to participate this time round as I've been busy with Inktober this month, so I decided to scale things down and do a quick pick in my watercolour sketchbook, so I hope you enjoy the video. Originally I'd thought of painting something orange instead of a pumpkin, but I found this cute reference photo on Pixabay of a little squirrel eating a pumpkin and thought it would be a nice one to paint. And after all, this is the Great Pumpkin Challenge. I sketched it out across both pages of my sketchbook as I really like doing this, and then used the reference photo to pick out my colour palette. And I have to say, I was so looking forward to using more than one colour for a change, as my Inktober paintings have all been painted in monochrome using blue ink. I chose cadmium orange deep for the pumpkin and cadmium yellow light to mix into the more yellow areas on the left hand side. I also swatched out burnt sienna and burnt umber for the darker shadows and neutral tint to mix darker browns. Getting back to painting with watercolour in my sketchbook was something I was really looking forward to, and I started by pre-wetting the pumpkin so I could drop in the orange and yellow and let them mix together on the paper. I used a very watery mix of the paint to start with to get in the main shapes and form of the pumpkin. For my Inktober paintings, I've been painting on Archer's 300 grams 100% cotton cold press paper, and I really noticed the difference when going back to this sketchbook. This is a watercolour sketchbook by Hahnemuhle, but it's not cotton and the weight is only 200 GSM. I found it dried a lot quicker than the cotton paper and I had a bit of a hard time mixing my paint directly on the paper. And now I come to think of it, I've probably mentioned this in previous sketchbook videos. Nonetheless, I carried on and used the same yellow-orange mix to add a base glow to the squirrel's chest. For his head and body, I mixed together burnt umber with a bit of neutral tint and applied a light underpainting to map out the lightest and darkest areas and just get some paint on the paper. I've been using my water brush a lot for Inktober, and I used it again on this painting as I like the firm pointy brush nib and having a ready flow of water. On the squirrel's tail, I used short flicky movements with the brush in the direction of fur growth to create tapered ends for a realistic and natural look. I used the same method on the squirrel's face. With that all dry, I started to build up the colour intensity and add a bit more detail, and it was a lot easier to see what I was doing with the underpainting down. Something else I like to do is to put my darkest areas in early on as well, since then you have both the lightest areas, and with watercolour this is usually the white of the paper, and the darkest areas too, giving you contrast. From here on, all you have to do is fill in the mid-tones in between. This method of painting might seem a bit structured or organised, but it can be a useful tool if you struggle with values or find that your finished paintings lack contrast and depth. Let me know in the comments if this is a method you've ever used, or do you feel like it sucks some of the spontaneity and fun out of watercolour painting? Personally, I tend to vary my techniques depending on the subject, how I'm feeling that day, and on how much time I have. I didn't have a lot of time to paint this piece, and I think that's why what happened next happened. I'd switched over to a slightly larger regular paintbrush to add another layer of more concentrated paint to the pumpkin. I'd started by pre-wetting the paper again, but it ended up drying too quickly, leaving hard edges where I'd wanted soft ones, and softening the edges with a clean damp brush just caused back runs. I waited for it to completely dry again and this time tried the wet on dry technique, but that ended up being streaky too, which was really frustrating. So it was at this point that I made the executive decision to finish this painting using coloured pencils. It wasn't what I planned, but art doesn't always go according to plan. It's been a while since I've used coloured pencils, so it was nice to have a change, and there's something about all those colours that is just so appealing. And you can't beat the smell of a newly sharpened pencil. So this time I started off with a squirrel's eye and a dark sepia pencil rather than straight black, and from there worked my way outwards following the direction of fur growth, and only using a very light pressure through my pencil. I like to keep my pencils nice and sharp to help with the details in the facial features, and it also helps to fill in any tooth of the paper. Using my initial watercolour underpainting as a reminder, I also added some dark cadmium yellow to the squirrel's chest to show the reflection from the pumpkin, and added some terracotta and burnt sienna into the darker parts around the squirrel's mouth. I continued to add light layers of coloured pencil, building up depth and texture with a variety of oranges and browns. For hair and fur, I tend to work from light to dark and use my reference photo to separate out areas of fur into sections to make it more manageable. I'm no coloured pencil expert, but so far as technique is concerned, here I use a flicking motion with my pencil, reducing the pressure at the end of each stroke so the individual hairs are nice and fine and natural looking. I did the same on the squirrel's tail, only this time I made my pencil strokes longer to match up with the longer fur here. To finish off the squirrel, I added some light glazes of coloured pencil just to overall change up the colour in a few areas that I thought needed it. Here I'm using sepia, but I also use a bit of mauve later on too. Then finally it was back to the pumpkin and to smooth over my uneven watercolour. I used the same yellows and oranges I'd used on the squirrel's chest and again worked from light to dark colours. This time though I used my pencils in a variety of directions to really cover up the tooth of the paper. With the squirrel I wasn't as concerned, as having some of the white of the paper showing through gave a bit more of a textured look and actually helped it to look more natural. With the smoother surface of the pumpkin though, I wanted to blend the colours together more evenly, and this meant adding lots of light layers. With hindsight, coloured pencil wasn't the best choice of medium considering I had limited time to finish this piece, as the layering process can be time consuming, but I wasn't sure if I could add solvent to speed up the process having watercolour underneath, so instead I used a white Prismacolor pencil to blend with. This works really well but can lighten up your colours. As long as you don't press down too hard though, you can still go in and layer more colour on top to bring back the vibrancy. Next, I begin to add in some of the grooves in the pumpkin using darker shades of terracotta. I also glazed over some light cadmium red. And used its very sharp point to mark in the darker rim of the pumpkin. I used burnt sienna next to darken up the shadow under the pumpkin, and a bit of violet to add shading to the right hand side. With that done, I coloured the pumpkin top, which strangely I really enjoyed. I've not really been inspired to draw fruit or vegetables much before, but after this I might give it another go. Let me know what you think. I've also got a few new watercolour sketchbooks to test out, so perhaps I could combine the two. Leave a comment if this is something you'd like to see on my channel. I finished off this sketchbook piece by adding a bit more glazing, which helped to boost the contrast. And with that, the Great Pumpkin Challenge was complete. The surface of the pumpkin I think could have been smoother as it still looked a bit grainy, But on the whole, and in spite of the few hiccups at the start with my watercolours, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, bye.